They asked for mercy. Earth delivered its champions instead. The ambassador's hands trembled as she stood before the Galactic Council's emergency session. Zara, 9 of the Velkan Republic, had witnessed the destruction of 3-star systems in as many days. Her people's homeworlds were nothing but cosmic dust now, scattered across the void by an enemy so ruthless that even speaking their name brought terror to the assembled delegates. Honored Council, Zara, 9 began, her voice cracking despite her diplomatic training. The scourge is broken through our final defensive lines. Our military is gone. Our colonies are ash. We have perhaps 72 hours before they reach our core worlds where billions of civilians await certain death. The council chamber fell silent. Representatives from dozens of species sat in their ornate seats, each one knowing that their own worlds could be next. The scourge had appeared 6 months ago from the galaxy's outer rim, a biomechanical horde that consumed everything in its path. No negotiations had been attempted, no quarter given. They simply arrived, destroyed, and moved on to the next target. "What do you ask of us?" rumbled the Thackeray representative, his stone-like features showing rare emotion. "We ask for mercy," Zara, 9 whispered. "Not for our warriors, for they are already dead. Not for our leaders, for we have failed our people. We ask mercy for the children who will never see tomorrow, for the mothers who sing lullabies while death approaches, for the fathers who can only hold their families close as the end comes." The Centauri delegate, tall and ethereal, spoke next. "The combined fleets of 3 sectors have already fallen to the scourge. What power do you believe we possess that our greatest military minds did not?" "There is one hope," said Councillor Vex, the ancient Korthani who rarely spoke in sessions. His 6 eyes focused on something beyond the chamber walls. One species that has never been tested in true galactic warfare. One world that has remained quarantined. A collective intake of breath echoed through the chamber. Even the newest council members knew of Earth. The small blue world in the Sol system that had been discovered 3 centuries ago during first expansion. The planet whose inhabitants had been deemed too primitive for contact, too violent for integration, too unpredictable for alliance. "You speak of the humans," said the Altarian representative, her melodic voice carrying notes of disbelief. "The barbarians who wage war upon their own kind, who fight with chemical explosives and kinetic weapons. What could such primitives accomplish against technology that has defeated our finest?" Councillor Vex's ancient eyes gleamed. Perhaps nothing, or perhaps everything. Their quarantine was not established because they were weak, honored colleagues. It was established because they were concerning. The chamber erupted in debate. Some species called it madness to even consider breaking the Sol quarantine. Others argued that desperate times demanded desperate measures. Through it all, Zura, 9, stood motionless, thinking of the children on her home worlds who were running out of time. "The human classification files are sealed," protested the Andromedan delegate. "For good reason, I suspect." "The reason," said Vex slowly, "is that in all our exploration of this galaxy, across thousands of worlds and hundreds of species, we have never encountered a race quite like them. They're the only species we have observed that seems to grow stronger when faced with impossible odds. The only ones who view extinction-level threats as merely another challenge to overcome. But their technology is centuries behind ours," the Centauri insisted. "Technology," mused Vex, "is not always the determining factor in war. Sometimes the deciding element is something far more primitive, something that most civilized species have long since evolved past." "And what is that?" asked Zernine, desperate for any hope. "The willingness to fight until death. Not for glory, not for conquest, but for the simple principle that surrender is unacceptable. Humans, you see, have never learned when to quit." The vote was closer than anyone expected. In the end, it was Zara 9's final plea that swayed the council. "If we do nothing, we die. If we contact these humans and they refuse to help, we die. If we contact them and they fail, we die. But if there's even the smallest chance that they might succeed." The authorization to break the Sol quarantine passed by a single vote. 3 hours later, an automated probe dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. Its sensors immediately detected the expected primitive radio transmissions, chemical rocket exhausts, and nuclear energy signatures that marked a barely space-capable civilization. What the probe did not expect was the immediate response. 17 minutes after arrival, the probe found itself surrounded by vessels that shouldn't have existed. Sleek craft that moved without visible propulsion, armed with weapons that defied conventional physics, crewed by beings who had supposedly never traveled beyond their own moon. The lead human vessel transmitted a simple message. You are in restricted space. State your business or be destroyed. The probe's AI, programmed for this unlikely scenario, activated its diplomatic protocols. I am an envoy of the Galactic Council. We seek audience with the leaders of Earth regarding a matter of galactic security. A long pause followed. Then, Galactic Council, huh? Took you long enough. Follow us. Any deviation from our flight path will result in your immediate vaporization. Welcome to Sol. As the probe was escorted toward the blue world, its sensors recorded impossible readings. Orbital installations that hadn't been there during the last surveillance scan 50 years ago. Energy signatures that suggested technology centuries beyond what Earth should possess. And, most troubling of all, the complete absence of any indication that humanity was still confined to just one world. On the Council's homeworld, emergency meetings were already beginning. The realization was spreading that perhaps Earth had been quarantining them, not the other way around. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Olympus, watching the alien probe through the main viewer. Her weathered face showed no emotion as the readings came in from the science station. After 30 years in the United Earth Defense Force, she had learned to expect the unexpected. Admiral, her tactical officer called out. The probe's transmissions are being monitored by at least 40 different galactic powers. This isn't just a first contact scenario. Something big is happening out there. Any indication of the nature of their emergency? Negative. The initial message just mentions galactic security and requests immediate council representation. Chen nodded. Signal Fleet Command. Tell them it's time to dust off the Revelation Protocol. If the galaxy is finally ready to meet us officially, they're going to get quite a surprise. In the depths of Cheyenne Mountain, ancient servers hummed to life for the first time in decades. The Revelation Protocol had been developed in the early days after humanity's first detection of galactic civilization. The plan was simple. If the galaxy ever came calling, Earth would reveal just enough of its true capabilities to ensure it was taken seriously, but never enough to reveal the full extent of human expansion and technology. What the galaxy was about to discover was that humanity had never been primitive. They had simply been very, very careful about revealing their true nature. The Sol system wasn't humanity's cradle, it was their greatest deception. While the galaxy had watched one world, assuming they were observing the entirety of human civilization, humanity had been busy colonizing, expanding, and preparing for the day when the galaxy would inevitably need their help. That day had finally arrived. As the alien probe descended toward Earth, hidden sensors throughout the Sol system recorded its every movement, analyzing its technology, its materials, its capabilities. Within hours, human scientists would understand more about galactic civilization than the galaxy understood about humanity. The Scourge had made a critical error in their approach to galactic conquest. They had studied their enemies, learned their strengths and weaknesses, adapted their tactics accordingly. They had planned for every conceivable form of resistance the galaxy might offer. They had not planned for the one species that had been preparing for galactic warfare for over 3 centuries while pretending to be primitive savages barely capable of reaching their own moon. The galaxy had asked for mercy. Earth was about to deliver something far more valuable: hope. But first, the galaxy would learn what humanity had discovered long ago, that sometimes the greatest mercy comes not from surrender, but from the absolute refusal to yield even when victory seems impossible. The probe touched down on a landing pad in Geneva, where the old United Nations building still stood as a museum. It was a deliberate choice, designed to maintain the illusion for just a little while longer. Soon enough, the galaxy would learn the truth about humanity. Soon enough, they would understand why Earth had remained hidden for so long. But for now, let them believe they were dealing with primitives. The revelation would be all the more shocking when it came. /# they asked for mercy. Earth delivered its champions instead. Dr. Elizabeth Morrison adjusted her translator earpiece as she walked through the corridors of the Geneva facility. As Earth's foremost xenobiologist and current Secretary General of the United Earth Council, she had been chosen to conduct humanity's first official diplomatic contact with galactic civilization. Behind her professional calm, her mind raced with the implications of this moment. The alien delegation consisted of Ambassador Zara 9 and two military advisors from species Morrison had only read about in classified reports. The Velkin possessed an elegant, almost crystalline appearance, while her companions, a Centauri and a Thraccari, represented the physical diversity of galactic civilization. Secretary Morrison, Zara 9 began as they settled into the conference room. I must express our gratitude for agreeing to this meeting. We realize that contact protocols have been circumvented. Morrison smiled diplomatically. Crisis has a way of making normal procedures seem less important. Please, tell me about this threat your people face. What followed was a briefing that would have terrified most species. The Scourge, as they were known, defied conventional understanding of warfare. They appear to be a hybrid of biological and mechanical components, adapting in real time to any defense thrown against them. They consume not just planets, but the very space around them, leaving regions of dead void where star systems once existed. 13 star systems have fallen in the past month. The Thraccari military advisor, General Korvax, reported grimly. Our finest strategic minds estimate the Scourge will reach the galaxy's core worlds within 6 standard cycles. After that, total galactic extinction, finished the Centauri officer, Colonel Lias. They show no interest in communication, negotiation, or anything beyond complete consumption of all matter in their path. Morrison absorbed the information while maintaining her composed exterior. Internally, she was already running calculations based on humanity's own encounters with similar threats during their hidden expansion. The Scourge sounded remarkably similar to the Devourers that humanity had faced in the Kepler sector 70 years ago. Your fleet compositions and tactical approaches, Morrison said carefully, they follow standard galactic doctrine, I assume. Of course, General Korvax replied, looking puzzled. Combined arms formations, energy-based weaponry, quantum shields, gravitic manipulation. The finest military science the galaxy has developed over millennia. And none of it has been effective? The Scourge adapts faster than we can modify our tactics. They consume our energy weapons discharge, phase through our shields, and seem to predict our gravitic manipulations before we execute them. Morrison nodded thoughtfully. Through her neural implant, technology the galaxy wouldn't recognize for another 1,000 years, she was already receiving tactical analyses from Earth Strategic Command. The preliminary assessment was encouraging, if the reports were accurate. What exactly does the Galactic Council hope to gain from Earth's involvement? Morrison asked. Our technology is, as you've undoubtedly observed, quite primitive by your standards. Ambassador Zara 9 leaned forward. Counselor Vex believes that primitive technology might be precisely what we need. The Scourge has encountered and adapted to every form of advanced warfare our galaxy possesses. But they have never faced what you might bring to the conflict. Chemical explosives, Colonel Lias said with barely concealed skepticism. Kinetic projectiles, crude fusion reactions. How could such weapons possibly succeed where quantum destabilizers and dimensional shredders have failed? Morrison's smile became slightly sharper. Perhaps because they're not expecting them. Tell me, in all your encounters with the Scourge, have you ever used simple, directed nuclear explosions? Nuclear weapons? General Korvax's stone-like features shifted in what might have been confusion. Those are planet killers. Crude, uncontrollable, devastating to everything in their radius. No civilized species would consider using such weapons in space combat. Exactly, Morrison said quietly. No civilized species would consider it. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Ambassador Zara 9 was the first to speak. You're not offering to send advisors or technical support. You're offering to join the fight directly. If the Galactic Council formally requests Earth's military assistance against the Scourge, Morrison replied, we will respond. But you should understand what you're asking for. Humanity has never fought a war we intended to lose. We don't understand the concept of acceptable casualties or strategic withdrawal. When we commit to a conflict, we commit completely. Through the facility's hidden sensors, the conversation was being monitored by hundreds of analysts across the Sol system. Deep in the asteroid belt, the construction yards that had built humanity's true fleet hummed with increased activity. On Mars, the military academies where Earth's finest strategic minds had trained for centuries against theoretical galactic threats began updating their lesson plans with real enemy data. "There's something else you should know," Zura 9 continued hesitantly. "The Council's archives contain limited information about your species. What little we have suggests that humans are unique in certain respects, such as your psychological profiles indicate an unusual relationship with violence and conflict. Most species evolve beyond their aggressive tendencies as they develop advanced civilization. Humans appear to have retained and refined these instincts while simultaneously achieving technological sophistication." Morrison considered her response carefully. The galaxy was about to learn that their assumptions about human development had been catastrophically wrong, but there was no reason to reveal everything at once. "It's true that humans have a complicated relationship with warfare," she admitted. "We've fought each other for millennia, developed increasingly efficient ways to destroy our enemies, and somehow managed to unite as a species without losing our edge. Most of our greatest technological achievements have come from military research. The Council debates whether this makes you unsuitable for galactic civilization or perfectly suited for dealing with the Scourge," Colonel Elias observed. "Why not both?" Morrison replied with dark humor. General Korvax spoke up. "If Earth agrees to assist, what would you require from the Galactic Council? Full tactical intelligence on Scourge capabilities, complete star charts of affected regions, and absolute operational autonomy for human forces. We fight our way, using our methods, with our command structure intact. The Council would never agree to unsupervised, primitive forces," Colonel Elias began. "Then, the Council can face the Scourge without us," Morrison interrupted smoothly. "You came here asking for help, not offering to manage our response. If you want our assistance, you accept our terms." Ambassador Zura 9 exchanged glances with her military companions. "I will need to consult with the Council, but given our situation, I believe your terms will be acceptable." "Good. How long until the Scourge reaches the next target world?" 43 standard hours. Morrison stood, effectively ending the meeting. "Then, you'll have Earth's answer within 36 hours. I suggest you use that time to prepare your people for what comes next." As the alien delegation was escorted to their quarters, Morrison walked to her private office and activated the quantum communicator that connected her directly to Earth's true command structure. Admiral Chen appeared on the holographic display within seconds. "Sarah, please tell me our preparations are complete. The Revelation fleets have been standing by for decades. Liz, we can have the first expeditionary force ready to deploy within 18 hours. The question is, how much do we show them initially?" Morrison considered. "Start with the conventional forces. Let them think we're bringing primitive weapons and human determination to the fight. We'll escalate as necessary. And if the Scourge proves more dangerous than our intelligence suggests, then we stop pretending to be primitive and show the galaxy what humanity has really been doing for the past 3 centuries." Admiral Chen grinned. "The kids are going to love this. First real combat deployment since the Kepler campaign. Brief them carefully, Sarah. The galaxy is watching now. Everything we do will be analyzed, judged, and remembered. We get one chance to make the right first impression." "Understood. I'll begin deployment immediately." As the communication ended, Morrison looked out the window at the deceptively peaceful Earth below. Tomorrow, the galaxy would begin learning the truth about humanity. But tonight, she allowed herself a moment to appreciate the magnificent deception her species had maintained for so long. The Scourge thought they were dealing with a galaxy of civilized, predictable enemies. They had adapted to energy weapons, quantum technology, and sophisticated military doctrine. They had never encountered an enemy that still considered orbital bombardment with crude nuclear warheads an acceptable opening move in a space battle. More importantly, they had never faced an enemy that had spent 300 years preparing for this exact moment. Humanity hadn't remained primitive. They had remained hidden, studying the galaxy, learning its weaknesses, and developing tactics specifically designed to exploit the overconfidence of advanced civilizations. The galaxy had asked for mercy. Tomorrow, Earth would begin teaching them the difference between mercy and victory. Hashtag, they asked for mercy. Earth delivered its champions instead. The Galactic Council's emergency session had been in continuous debate for 16 hours when a message from Earth arrived. Ambassador Zura, 9, stood before the assembled delegates, her crystalline features reflecting the Council chamber's lights as she transmitted humanity's response. The United Earth Council accepts the Galactic Council's request for military assistance against the Scourge, she announced. Human forces will deploy to the Kepler 442 system within 24 hours to intercept the Scourge advance. Counselor Vex leaned forward in his ancient seat. What forces are they deploying? How many ships? According to Secretary Morrison, Earth is dispatching what they call the First Expeditionary Force. The exact composition was classified, but she indicated it would be sufficient for initial engagement. The Centauri representative scoffed. A single expeditionary force from a primitive world? What can they possibly hope to accomplish? Perhaps, said Vex thoughtfully, we are about to find out. In the Sol system, the largest military operation in human history was reaching its final stages. Admiral Chun stood on the bridge of the UES Olympus as her task force prepared for the first official human military action beyond the Sol quarantine. Around her, 200 of humanity's finest warships moved into formation, though the galaxy would only see what Earth wanted them to see. The ships themselves were a carefully crafted deception. To galactic sensors, they would appear crude, primitive, barely space-worthy vessels held together by determination and primitive technology. The reality was far different. Each ship represented centuries of advancement beyond anything the galaxy currently possessed, but their true capabilities remained hidden behind holographic disguises and sensor dampeners. Signal from Fleet Command, reported Commander Torres from the communications station. Operation Revelation is authorized. All ships are green for deployment. Shin nodded. Begin quantum tunnel generation. Set destination for Kepler 442 outer system. Time to show the galaxy what humanity brings to a real fight. On the bridge of her flagship, Captain Maria Santos reviewed the tactical briefings one final time. The UES Defiance was officially listed as a primitive nuclear-armed destroyer. In reality, it was one of humanity's most advanced stealth assault vessels, capable of engaging entire galactic fleets single-handedly. Today, it would pretend to be something much less threatening. Remember, Santos addressed her crew, we maintain the deception until absolutely necessary. The galaxy expects primitive weapons and desperate tactics. Let's give them exactly what they expect until we don't. Throughout the human fleet, similar conversations were taking place. Humanity had spent centuries preparing for galactic warfare while hidden behind the facade of primitive development. Their ships were equipped with weapons the galaxy couldn't imagine, defenses that violated known physics, and tactical systems that had been designed specifically to exploit the weaknesses of advanced galactic military doctrine. The quantum tunnels opened, and humanity stepped onto the galactic stage. Kepler 442 had been a thriving system with 3 inhabited worlds and extensive orbital infrastructure. Now it was a battlefield where the last defenders of the Altarian Navy made their final stand against an implacable enemy. Admiral Kesvar watched from his command ship as another of his vessels was consumed by the writhing biomechanical mass that had once been a Scourge destroyer. Sir, his tactical officer reported, we're receiving a transmission from Earth ships. Earth? The quarantined primitive world. Yes, sir. They're requesting tactical data and permission to engage the Scourge. On the main viewer, Kesvar watched as the human fleet dropped out of what appeared to be crude faster-than-light travel. The ships looked exactly as he had expected, angular, brutal constructions of metal and primitive fusion drives. They moved with none of the elegant grace of advanced galactic vessels, instead displaying the kind of straightforward, no-nonsense functionality that characterized primitive technology. How many ships? He asked. 200 vessels of various sizes. Composition appears to be primarily kinetic weapons and primitive fusion devices. Sir, they're requesting permission to take point position in the engagement. Admiral Kesvar almost laughed. These primitive humans wanted to lead an attack against an enemy that had destroyed the finest fleets in the galaxy? Grant their request, he decided. If they want to sacrifice themselves to buy us a few more minutes, let them. Captain Santos received the Altarian fleet's permission to engage with grim satisfaction. Through her ship's true sensors, she could see the Scourge formation approaching, 17 massive biomechanical vessels that defied conventional understanding of ship design. They moved like living creatures, their hulls shifting and adapting in real time, weapons systems that seemed to grow from their superstructure as needed. Interesting, she murmured, studying the tactical display. They're not actually ships at all, are they? Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Park, nodded. Analysis suggests they're individual organisms, each one the size of a dreadnought. The weapon systems and defensive capabilities appear to be biological functions rather than technological systems. No wonder conventional weapons have been ineffective. You can't hack biology, and energy weapons probably just feed them. Santos opened a channel to the fleet. All ships, this is Defiance Actual. Target analysis confirms biological entities, not mechanical constructs. Switch to Infestation Protocol 7. Prepare biological warfare packages and kinetic kill vehicles. Remember, we're primitive savages with crude weapons. Act accordingly. Throughout the human fleet, weapons systems came online that the galaxy didn't know existed. Biological warfare had been banned by galactic convention for millennia, considered too dangerous and unpredictable for civilized warfare. Kinetic kill vehicles, simple masses accelerated to significant percentages of light speed, had been abandoned as inefficient compared to energy weapons. Humanity had never signed the galactic conventions and had never abandoned any weapon that proved effective. The Scourge detected the approaching human fleet and responded as they had to every other enemy, with immediate, overwhelming force. Bioplasma cannons erupted from their hulls, streams of corrosive energy that had dissolved the hulls of countless galactic ships. The human vessels made no attempt to dodge. Instead, they activated primitive-looking force fields and absorbed the attacks while continuing their approach. To galactic observers, it looked like desperate courage from ships too crude to implement proper evasive maneuvers. In reality, humanity's shields were simply so far beyond galactic technology that the Scourge weapons couldn't penetrate them. The bioplasma that had destroyed advanced galactic vessels was absorbed harmlessly by defensive systems the enemy couldn't even detect. All ships, Captain Santos commanded, commence firing. Give them something to remember. What happened next would be analyzed by galactic military theorists for generations. The human fleet opened fire with weapons that seemed impossibly primitive: nuclear missiles, kinetic projectiles, and what appeared to be simple chemical explosives. The galactic observers watched in horror as the humans seemed to sacrifice themselves in a desperate, doomed attack against an obviously superior enemy. But the Scourge began to die. Nuclear warheads designed by humanity's weapons scientists detonated not with the crude fusion reactions the galaxy expected, but with carefully engineered matter-antimatter annihilation events that collapsed space-time in precise patterns. Kinetic projectiles struck with the force of planets, their impact enhanced by gravitational manipulation technology that made them effectively unstoppable. Most devastating of all were the biological weapons. Humanity had spent decades analyzing samples of consumed galactic vessels, developing targeted viruses, bacteria, and synthetic organisms designed specifically to attack biological entities like the Scourge. These weapons spread through the enemy formations like wildfire, causing the massive bioships to convulse and begin cannibalizing themselves. In less than 30 minutes, 17 Scourge vessels, entities that had destroyed entire galactic fleets, were reduced to floating biological debris. Admiral Kesvar stared at his tactical display in stunned disbelief. What just happened? His tactical officer's voice was shaky. The humans, they destroyed the entire Scourge formation with primitive weapons. Sir, I don't understand how this is possible. On the Defiance's bridge, Captain Santos allowed herself a small smile. Signal the Altarian fleet. Tell them the immediate threat is neutralized. Then, open a channel to Earth. It's time for Phase 2 of Operation Revelation. Admiral Chen's voice came through clearly. Outstanding work, Maria. How did they respond to the demonstration? About as expected. Complete shock and confusion. They can't understand how primitive weapons could be effective against an enemy their advanced technology couldn't touch. Perfect. begin revealing selected capabilities. Let them think they're seeing us adapt and improvise. No need to show them we've been preparing for this exact scenario for 3 centuries. As news of the victory spread through the galactic communication networks, emergency sessions convened on dozens of worlds. The impossible had happened. Not only had the primitives from Earth survived contact with the Scourge, they had achieved a complete victory using weapons and tactics that violated everything the galaxy understood about modern warfare. On the Galactic Council homeworld, Counselor Vex read the battle reports with growing understanding. The other council members debated how primitive weapons could have succeeded where advanced technology failed, but Vex was beginning to suspect the truth. Earth had never been primitive. They had simply been very, very patient. The real question now was not whether humanity could help defeat the Scourge. Clearly they could. The question was what humanity would demand in return, and what the galaxy would look like when this war was over. For the first time in months, Ambassador Zura, 9, felt something approaching hope. But as she read the detailed reports of human combat effectiveness, she also felt something else. The first stirrings of a fear that perhaps the galaxy had just replaced one existential threat with another. Captain Santos stood on her bridge, watching the biological debris of the former Scourge fleet drift through space. Her crew was already analyzing the remains, learning everything they could about their new enemy. This had been just the first engagement, a simple test of human capabilities against Scourge tactics. The real war was about to begin. #They asked for mercy. Earth delivered its champions instead. The victory at Kepler 442 sent shockwaves through galactic civilization that reached far beyond simple military implications. Within hours of the battle's end, every major government, military organization, and research institution in the galaxy was demanding explanations for how primitive Earth weapons had achieved what their finest technology could not. Dr. Senecor, the galaxy's leading expert on military technology, stood before an emergency assembly of the Scientific Council on Centauri Prime. Her normally composed features showed the strain of 3 sleepless days analyzing the battle data. The preliminary analysis is troubling, she began, activating holographic displays that showed the engagement from multiple angles. The humans claimed to have used nuclear weapons, kinetic projectiles, and chemical explosives. However, our sensor data suggests something far more complex. The assembled scientists leaned forward as the hologram replayed the moment when human nuclear warheads struck the Scourge vessels. Instead of the crude fusion reactions they expected, the explosions showed energy signatures that defied known physics. This is not fusion, Dr. Core continued. The energy output, the gravitational distortions, the way space-time itself seemed to collapse at the point of detonation. This suggests matter-antimatter annihilation with spatial manipulation technology we've never encountered. A Thackeray physicist rumbled from the back of the auditorium. Impossible. Antimatter containment requires quantum field generators that these primitives cannot possibly possess. That was my initial assumption as well, Dr. Core replied, until I analyzed their kinetic projectiles. The hologram shifted to show the human fleet firing what appeared to be simple metal projectiles at the Scourge. To the naked eye, they looked like primitive railgun rounds. The sensor data told a different story. Each projectile massed approximately 10 kilograms, Dr. Core explained. Upon impact, they delivered kinetic energy equivalent to a Class 7 planetary bombardment weapon. The mathematical impossibility is staggering. To achieve such energy output, these projectiles would need to be traveling at significant fractions of light speed. The implications hung heavy in the auditorium air. Such velocities required not just advanced technology, but physics applications that push the boundaries of galactic understanding. There's more, Dr. Core continued grimly. Analysis of their biological weapons suggests genetic engineering capabilities that surpass our own by several orders of magnitude. They didn't just deploy organisms that attacked the Scourge. They deployed organisms specifically designed to attack the Scourge's unique biology. This suggests they had detailed knowledge of Scourge physiology before the battle. A voice from the audience called out, "Are you suggesting the humans have encountered the Scourge before?" "I'm suggesting," Dr. Core replied carefully, "that Earth may not be as isolated or primitive as we believed." Meanwhile, In the depths of space between galactic arms, the true Scourge fleet received reports of the defeat at Kepler 442. The loss of 17 vessels was insignificant compared to their total numbers, but the manner of the defeat was concerning. In 3,000 years of galactic consumption, they had never encountered weapons like those used by the humans. The Scourge overmined, a collective intelligence spanning millions of biomechanical vessels, analyzed the battle data with growing interest. The galaxy had been disappointingly predictable in its responses. Energy weapons, quantum shields, gravitic manipulation, all technologies they had encountered and adapted to countless times across multiple galaxies. But these humans used crude matter-state weapons enhanced with physics applications the Scourge had never encountered. More intriguingly, their biological weapons showed an understanding of Scourge physiology that should have been impossible for a species that had never encountered them before. The Overmind made a decision that would alter the course of the war. Instead of continuing their systematic consumption of galactic space, they would focus their efforts on understanding and destroying humanity. These creatures represented either a fascinating evolutionary development or a genuine threat to Scourge expansion. Either way, they demanded immediate attention. On Earth, the highest levels of government were in continuous session as reports filtered in from the battle zone. President Chen Okafor stood in the Situation Room deep beneath the Rockies, surrounded by the military and scientific leadership that had guided humanity's hidden expansion for centuries. The deception is holding, reported Admiral Chun via secure quantum link. Galactic observers still believe they witnessed primitive weapons achieving unexpected success through luck and desperation. How long can we maintain the facade? Asked Dr. Sarah Voss, Earth's foremost expert on galactic civilization. That depends on what the Scourge does next, replied General Morrison, Elizabeth Morrison's brother and commander of Earth's Special Warfare Divisions. If they continue with standard tactics, we can keep pretending to be primitive for several more engagements. If they adapt specifically to counter human weapons, then we escalate, President Chen Okafor decided. The galaxy needs to see that humanity can protect them, but they're not ready to learn the full truth about our capabilities. Not yet. There is another concern, Dr. Voss interjected. Our intelligence suggests that some galactic powers are beginning to question the official narrative. If they start investigating Earth more thoroughly, they'll find exactly what we want them to find, Admiral Chun assured her. The Soul Deception has held for 3 centuries. A few military victories won't compromise our operational security. What none of them knew was that the investigation was already underway. Counselor Vex had not achieved his position through political maneuvering or diplomatic skill. He was one of the galaxy's most accomplished intelligence operatives, and his instincts were telling him that something about the human situation didn't add up. While the rest of the council debated how primitive weapons could defeat advanced enemies, Vex was quietly commissioning deep space reconnaissance missions to the Sol system. The first probe to slip past the system's outer defenses confirmed his suspicions. The Sol system wasn't the primitive backwater the galaxy believed it to be. Orbital installations that hadn't existed during previous surveillance scans now dotted every major body. Energy readings suggested industrial capacity that rivaled entire galactic sectors. Most telling of all, the complete absence of any evidence that humanity was still confined to just one world. They've been hiding, Vex murmured to himself as he reviewed the classified data in his private quarters. For centuries, they've been hiding their true development while we assumed they were primitive. But why? The answer, when it came to him, sent a chill through his ancient form. Humanity hadn't been hiding because they were afraid of galactic civilization. They had been hiding because they were preparing for something. The question was what? Back in the Kepler 442 system, Captain Santos was conducting her own investigation. Her science teams had recovered fragments of destroyed Scourge vessels, and what they found was disturbing. The biological components weren't entirely alien. They contained genetic markers that suggested familiarity with galactic species physiology. They've been studying us, reported Lieutenant Park from the analysis station. These organisms contain genetic material from dozens of galactic species. It's as if they've been cataloging galactic biology for centuries. Santos frowned. For what purpose? Unknown, but the implications are troubling. If they can analyze and incorporate genetic material from their victims, they may be able to adapt not just tactically, but biologically to any threat. The thought was sobering. Humanity's biological weapons had been effective because the Scourge had never encountered them before. If the enemy could adapt at the genetic level, that advantage would disappear quickly. Signal Earth Command, Santos ordered. Tell them we need to accelerate the timeline. If the Scourge can adapt to our weapons as quickly as I think they can, we're going to need heavier assets than the galaxy believes we possess. The reply came back within hours. Authorized. Prepare to reveal Phase 2 capabilities. Time to show the galaxy what human engineering can really accomplish. As the human fleet prepared for the next engagement, sensor platforms throughout the galaxy detected massive energy signatures emanating from the Sol system. Whatever humanity was preparing to deploy next, it was going to be far larger than anything they had shown before. On dozens of worlds, military commanders and government officials watched their sensors with growing unease. If Earth could hide this level of capability while pretending to be primitive, what else were they hiding? And, more importantly, what do they ultimately want from galactic civilization? Ambassador 9 stood once again before the Galactic Council, but this time the mood was far different from her initial desperate plea. The emergency session had been called not to discuss the Scourge threat, but to address the rapidly growing questions about Earth's true capabilities. The humans have saved 3 systems in the past week, she reported. Each engagement has shown escalating technological sophistication. Their ships appear to be upgrading their capabilities in real time, or we never understood what we were looking at in the first place. Counselor Vex finished grimly. The chamber erupted in debate as the reality of their situation became clear. They had invited what they believed to be primitive allies into a galactic war, only to discover that their primitive allies might be the most advanced civilization any of them had ever encountered. The question now was not whether humanity could help them defeat the Scourge. Clearly they could. The question was what humanity would demand as payment for their aid, and whether galactic civilization would survive having humanity as neighbors. As the Council argued, deep space sensors detected another massive Scourge fleet moving toward the galactic core. But, for the first time since the invasion began, the approaching fleet was not the most immediate concern on anyone's mind. That distinction now belonged to their mysterious, new allies from Earth. They asked for mercy. Earth delivered its champions instead. The final confrontation began not with the thunder of weapons fire, but with the quiet hum of quantum tunnels opening across 1,000 light-years of space. The Scourge Overmind had made its decision. Humanity represented a threat that required the full attention of their collective might. Every available vessel, every biological weapon, every adaptation they had developed across millennia of galactic conquest converged on the Sol system. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Olympus as her sensors detected the approaching armada. Over 50,000 Scourge vessels of every conceivable size and configuration moved toward Earth with the inexorable certainty of a cosmic tide. Behind her, the bridge crew worked with calm efficiency that spoke of years of preparation for exactly this moment. Contact from Earth Command, reported Commander Torres. Operation Revelation Final Phase is authorized. All deception protocols are lifted. Shen nodded grimly. Signal the fleet. Time to stop pretending. Throughout the Sol system, the truth began to reveal itself. The holographic disguises that had hidden humanity's true fleet composition flickered and died. What the galaxy had believed to be 200 primitive vessels were revealed to be the forward elements of a military force that defied comprehension. From hidden bases throughout the asteroid belt, from camouflaged installations on every planet and moon, from deep space anchorages that had remained invisible for centuries, humanity's true fleet began to deploy. Not hundreds of ships, but hundreds of thousands. Not primitive weapons, but technology that pushed the boundaries of what the universe itself could support. The Olympus herself transformed as her disguise protocols deactivated. What had appeared to be a crude dreadnought became something that belonged more in the realm of theoretical physics than practical engineering. Her hull rippled and shifted as dimensional anchors deployed, expanding her effective size into parallel spatial dimensions. Weapon systems emerged that drew their power directly from quantum vacuum fluctuations. Admiral Chen opened a channel to the approaching Scourge fleet. Unknown vessels, you are approaching Earth space. Withdraw immediately or face destruction. The Scourge response was predictable, a bioplasma bombardment that would have annihilated any conventional fleet. The energy discharge struck Earth's defenses and simply vanished, absorbed into dimensional sinks that redirected the attack's power back into the quantum vacuum from which it originated. Signal all ships, Chen commanded. Engage at will. Show them what happens when you threaten humanity's home. What followed was not a battle in any conventional sense. It was a demonstration of technological superiority so complete that it bordered on the incomprehensible. Human weapons reached across space-time to strike targets that existed in different dimensional phases. Scourge vessels that had adapted to every form of galactic warfare found themselves facing attacks that came from directions that didn't exist in normal space. The biological adaptations that had made the Scourge unstoppable proved useless against humanity's true weapons. Quantum disruptors that didn't destroy matter so much as convince it that it had never existed. Temporal weapons that aged enemy vessels into dust in microseconds. Reality anchors that locked space-time itself, preventing the Scourge from retreating or adapting. But the most devastating human weapon was information itself. Centuries of hidden expansion had allowed humanity to study the Scourge without the enemy's knowledge. They knew every adaptation, every biological process, every tactical doctrine the collective had developed. The Scourge, meanwhile, were facing an enemy they had never encountered, using tactics they had never imagined. On the bridge of the Scourge command vessel, what passed for individual consciousness struggled to comprehend what was happening. Their collective had consumed thousands of species across multiple galaxies. They had adapted to every form of resistance, incorporated every useful technology, learned from every defeat. But the humans weren't just defeating them. They were doing it with casual, almost dismissive efficiency, as if this outcome had never been in doubt. The realization that came to the Scourge overmined in its final moments was perhaps the most terrible of all. Humanity had been expecting them. For centuries, possibly millennia, these creatures had been preparing for exactly this encounter. The primitive facade, the hidden expansion, the technological development, all of it had been aimed at creating a force capable of not just defeating the Scourge, but utterly annihilating them. As the last Scourge vessel dissolved under the assault of weapons that redefined what warfare could be, the Overmind transmitted a single message across the quantum foam. Beware the humans. They are not what they seem. The message reached deep space where scattered Scourge outposts received it seconds before they too were eliminated by human strike forces that had apparently been moving into position for decades. The collective intelligence that had threatened galactic civilization for months was extinguished in less than 6 hours. Across the galaxy, the silence that followed was more thunderous than any explosion. On Centauri Prime, Dr. Senecor stared at sensor readings that defied not just understanding, but possibility itself. The energy signatures coming from the Sol system suggested weapons that drew power from the fundamental forces of reality. Ships that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Defensive systems that violated causality itself. They're not just advanced, she whispered to her emergency staff. They're operating with technology that shouldn't be possible according to our understanding of physics. Similar scenes played out on thousands of worlds as the galaxy struggled to comprehend what they had witnessed. The primitive species they had quarantined for centuries had just demonstrated the ability to casually annihilate a threat that had brought galactic civilization to its knees. The emergency council session that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. Representatives from every major power sat in stunned silence as the reports filtered in. Earth hadn't just defeated the Scourge. They had erased them so completely that it was as if the threat had never existed. Ambassador Zura, 9, her crystalline features reflecting the chamber's emergency lighting, was the first to find her voice. The human fleet is requesting permission to return to standard diplomatic status. They're offering to provide detailed intelligence on Scourge technology and tactics to all galactic powers. Standard diplomatic status? The Centauri representative's voice was hollow. After what we've just witnessed, Counselor Vex leaned forward, his ancient eyes showing something that might have been respect or fear. Perhaps it's time we ask the right questions. Not what humanity can do for us, but what they want from us. The answer came with Secretary Morrison's arrival at the council chambers 12 hours later. She walked into the assembly with the same calm professionalism she had displayed during first contact, as if casually annihilating galactic threats was simply another item on her diplomatic agenda. Honored Council, she began, Earth wishes to formally request membership in galactic civilization. We believe it's time for humanity to take its place among the community of spacefaring peoples. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Counselor Vex was the first to respond. Secretary Morrison, after what we've witnessed, surely you understand that the question is not whether humanity deserves membership, but whether the galaxy is ready for humanity as members. Morrison's smile was gentle, but somehow also terrifying. That's very kind of you to say, Counselor. We've been looking forward to this conversation for a very long time. How long? Asked the Thackeray representative. About 300 years, give or take a decade. The implications hit the assembled delegates like a physical blow. Humanity had been planning this moment since before most of their species had achieved interstellar travel. Every aspect of their development, their apparent primitiveness, their careful isolation, all of it had been preparation for eventually joining galactic civilization from a position of absolute strength. What do you want from us? Zara, 9 asked quietly. Peace, Morrison replied simply. Trade, cultural exchange, the same things any species wants from its neighbors. The difference is that we're in a position to ensure we get them. The negotiation that followed would reshape galactic civilization. Humanity's terms were surprisingly reasonable. They wanted trade rights, territorial recognition for their existing colonies, and representation proportional to their population and technological capabilities. They offered in return protection against external threats, technological sharing agreements, and access to the vast resources of their hidden empire. What they didn't offer was a choice. The galaxy could accept humanity as equal partners, or they could attempt to exclude the species that had just demonstrated the ability to reshape reality itself. The choice was obvious, even if deeply unsettling. As the formal agreements were signed and humanity officially joined galactic civilization, Ambassador Zara 9 found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this moment. Her people had asked for mercy when facing extinction. Earth had delivered something far more valuable, champions who could redefine what victory looked like. But as she watched Secretary Morrison sign the documents that would make humanity a galactic power, Zara 9 couldn't shake the feeling that they had just traded one existential concern for another. The scourge had threatened to consume galactic civilization. Humanity offered to protect it. The question that would occupy galactic scholars for generations was whether there was any meaningful difference between protection and conquest when the protecting power was so overwhelmingly superior to everything else in the galaxy. As Earth's ships returned to their hidden bases and the Sol system resumed its deceptive appearance of being a single-world civilization, one thing had changed forever. The galaxy now knew that when you asked humanity for mercy, you might get exactly what you needed, but you would definitely get more than you bargained for. Humanity had spent 3 centuries preparing for this moment. Now they would spend the next 3 centuries discovering what kind of neighbors they would be to a galaxy that had learned to fear their protection as much as they had once feared their own destruction. The age of human isolation was over. The age of human galactic civilization had begun.